I kill it till love. So love when I wanna get another one, I go take and do it in I love. Waiting you love, oh. Maybe waiting I love, oh. Waiting I love, I go do it with my heart, oh. Go no be vodka. Mr. Money Changer. But I know I know the ways that Mr.
You let it yum 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 yum. Na yela pere matina yela pese. You let it yum 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 yum. Na yela pere muna kapela. Chora kakisa, oyari yela pere balungna baire. Tupa ani, aingting tutma. Masanta tapage, bayu tutele. Masankele yura, babantu biyara. Oyari yela pere bongna baire. Tupa ani, asikulja tutma. Ikina kine, ukile sikulja kine. Titatia, undidle sikulja tia. Satasua, nzadle sikulja sua. Korakua, nkole sikulja kua. Sorasua, nsole sikulja sua. Tinayele peri, nakapera. Chora kakisa, yari hele peri. Bongna baire, tupa ani, sikulja tuma. Tupa ani, sikulja tuma.
Welcome to the Political Digest, your destination for insightful political analysis and discourse. I am your host, Ayuri Inga Agana, and it's an honor to have you join tonight. You know, here at the Political Digest, we have a dual mandate to nurture an electorate that is well informed and engaged, to demand accountability from those entrusted with public office. Yes, we are coming to you from the diaspora. To the Ghanaian in the diaspora, living abroad is not an escape. We are intimately connected to the homeland. We hardly plan or decide without a pause to factor Ghana in. In fact, our various triumphs and successes are directly attributed to our intimate connection constantly with the homeland. This sentiment does not diminish with the choice, even with the choice of a local partner. And the time spent abroad even deepens rather than diminishes this living bond. The diaspora is not a detachment, it's an extended vantage point and a satellite office for homeland progress. We see the potential of our homeland clearer from afar, and with that clarity, we are transformed into a refined observer and unwavering analyst committed to contributing to her growth and development. So through each episode of the Political Digest, we will delve into the intricacies of Ghanaian politics with erudite analysis and insightful commentary. From dissecting the policy proposals to scrutinizing the actions of our leaders, no stone would be left unturned. At the Political Digest, we believe in the power of dialogue, debate, and dissent. So we are excited to have you join us here today. And I'm going on this journey with my esteemed guests. I have Dr. James Amemaso, professor at Rutgers University, New Jersey. Hajia Ruki, communication officer, NDC USA chapter. Ivan Safo Edu, NDC USA communication team member.
Good afternoon.
Yes. Dr. Sita Seshi, a DAI and education consultant based in Canada. Hajia Sherifa Strong, based in New Jersey. Panelists, thank you for making time, and let's have at it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So today we are going to deal with two main topics. The first one is going to be the selection of Professor Jane Nana Opoku Agyeman as the running mate to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. I find this particularly important given that we just celebrated, the International Women's Day yesterday. And if Prof is elected together with John Dramani Mahama, she would be making history as the first female to occupy the position of vice president in Ghana. And then our next topic is going to be Ghana's Independence Day celebration. And we're going to position that conversation in the context of the commissioning of the National Cathedral by Ghana's opposition, the NDC members of parliament on 6th March. So, I hope time permits us to delve into these issues into detail and give you our informed position about these issues. But first of all, I would want to take the opportunity to offer my condolences to the family of John Kuma, MP for Ejisu, who was called to eternity on the 7th of March. In fact, I remember him when I was in level 100 in Legon. He was running for SRC president. I was in Commonwealth Hall, and then he, I think, was in Slava. And he was running against a Commonwealth Hall student. And of course, I was solidly behind the Commonwealth student. That election actually ended up in a stalemate. There was an undeclared winner. There was overvoting and all kinds of stuff related to that. As I remember John Kuma incident, he's always been interested in politics, even in his college days. So, I would welcome panelists if they have a few things to say about this very sad situation. And before we move on to our substantive topic of the day.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you. Do I have the floor?
Yes, you do.
And
yes.
Listeners. Yeah, talking about John, I went to Opoku High School with him together. He was my SP. And then we came to Legon together in 1999. Remember, prior to that, there was the Marlborough struggle. If you remember, Haruna was the SRC, all those big guys. But John and I finished Legon in 2003 together. I was a science student, so you won't hear much about us about that with science. But he and our baby, we've kept in touch. So we go way back from Opoku High School to, the demise hit me home because I'm still the president of Opoku High School here in the USA for those of our group A group. So it hit me real hard at home, yeah. So John is my guy. We went to Opoku High together and Legon together. So thanks for saying something, but it's hit, families both home and abroad, everywhere. People know people, right? But people have been with people like in a special way. So thanks for that gentle reminder, and wish our brother all the rest that he deserves. Thank you.
Okay.
We all agree. I believe we all agree that it's a tragic loss, to our country as a whole. Because as a political enthusiast, his name has come up, many times in good light, and he has contributed, greatly to our nation building. And it is just sad that, we lost him at a very early age when, he was just, rising up to his prime. I pray that his family would find the fortitude to bear his loss, and may his soul rest in the bosom of his Lord.
I think my colleague panelists have said it all. Not only did he occupy a very sensitive and key position in government, which is finance, because that is the heartbeat of the country's development and broadly. But just the fact that he's a fellow Ghanaian, we just very sorry to hear that he passed away untimely. But we wish the family the best, and we sympathize with everybody and Ghanaians across the world.
Anybody else before we move on? Okay. Well, so here we try to have fun in as much as we talk about very serious issues. So let's. Yes. Yes.
Think a young politician and someone that other people are looking up to, no matter the family, to have a better understanding. We Muslims said, and he takes, and for that matter, they should have my condolence, and then the condolence of some of my NDC USA chapter. I think I have proof if it can be fixed for me.
Your internet, perhaps, is the internet
my background
connection. Yes, I think it's the internet connection. Okay. All right. So then I think Hajj just shared similar sentiments as we did, expressing condolences to the family. So I would like to move us along and talk about the selection of Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman as the running mate to former President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And I wanted to begin with a more political question, and that question was supposed to go to Haji Aruki, but it seems we've lost her due to technical difficulty here. But I'll pose this to Evans. In fact, Ghana traditionally we favored vice presidents with background economics, right? And especially in this upcoming election, the economy is considered as one of the key issues that electors are expected to basically examine to make their decision. So how do you think Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman, not being an economist, being given this role?
Am I muted, Sharon?
No, you are not. So, but did you hear my question? Okay. All right. Okay. So I mean, James, you can go with this. The fact that historically we have dealt with, there's always been a priority given to economists, as especially given that our economies are so fragile, and then we tend to think that, having an economist, especially that the position of the vice president is also usually, the economic management team. How do you see, Prof occupying this position competently, given the history?
Thank you, comrade. Mr. Agana, our friend, first and foremost for having us on this show, and then for asking me to comment on the selection or the nomination of Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Very interesting time And then I think a lot of people across the world, Ghanaians in particular, are very excited for this nomination or re-nomination. And I think it's a decision of a visionary leader, because he can see things far beyond just some of us as men. Nana Jenopoku Ajiman, we know, is a woman of integrity. She had headed the University of Cape Coast as the vice chancellor. Running a university is like running a mini country. And those of us who are in academia, we know, is a really complicated area. So she's gained the experience and won the admiration of a lot of people across the country. But in terms of having an economist as vice president, traditionally, we know that it's a good thing. But believe me, we've seen one quite recently, Dr. Bawumia, who is still in office, and we've seen what he was able to do and not do. And so I don't think that should be a yardstick. We should rather have somebody who has the integrity and somebody who has, won the admiration of people, and of course committed to doing the right thing for the country. Nana Jenopoku Ajiman, as an educator, did exactly that back in Cape Coast, University of Cape Coast. In fact, at the time she was vice chancellor over there, we didn't hear about any scandal. We didn't hear about anything bad that was left there. She ran the place successfully. So if she was able to do that, you can imagine what she's able to do at the national level. And I think it's a good choice. We are excited that we'll have a woman to occupy the second highest office in the country. And I think that will be the transformation of the country. Not only that, because if you recall, Dr. Kweji Agri once said, if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. So we're right to have the right person. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, and just to follow up on that, when she was selected the first time in 2020, right? The then majority leader, what's his name, Osei Mensah Bonsu, actually, rendered a very, distasteful criticism of her selection. And from what I read from his criticism, it had nothing to do with, her integrity. He wasn't questioning her political savviness. She basically went straight into the relevance of her profession, especially that she is a professor of literature, right? He was trying to suggest that what has that profession got to do with running a country? In fact, and this criticism reminds me of, Socrates' criticism of literature in Plato's Republic. In fact, the final chapter of Plato's Republic, where Socrates is of the opinion that literature is not actual knowledge and it's only imitation of knowledge. So my question is, is Che Mensah Bonsu that profound? Was he rendering a Platonic criticism of Prof. Nana as coming from a profession that has no real relevance in terms of the truth and actual knowledge?
Is that to me?
Yes, I'm just following up on that. And perhaps I want you to really espouse how, for instance, maybe people's myopic perceptions about disciplines and how that can read into how they feel about the qualification of certain individuals to occupy certain positions.
Thank you. I think that assessment of Nana Jenopoku Ajiman was wrong-headed, and we saw that from the very beginning. And it's rooted in the way we see things broadly as Ghanaians. Very often we think that people who have certain line of education are supposed to rule. It shouldn't be so. Let me just give an example. When I came to the United States to study at the graduate level, there was an opportunity for me. There was a job show, and I went there trying to see what was going on. So I met with police officers who wanted to recruit me. And I told them, look, I was studying something that was not criminal justice. They said, no, that's not a problem, right? What you're studying is the ability to be able to write and read. We'll take you and train you and do exactly what you have to do. So the ability to read and write, the ability to analyze, and someone who had run an university, as I said, that is a mini nation that she was able to run. So that assessment of a minority or majority leader at the time was wrong. It shouldn't have been so. And of course, His favorite individual, Dr. Mamudu Bawumia, who happened to occupy the office for 7 years, we've seen what he was able to do and not do. So that is a wrong assessment. And to add to that, Nana Jenopuku Ajimai, as I said earlier, is a woman of integrity. I happen to be her student, one of her students at University of Cape Coast. I was in her class for 1 whole year. And when you talk about discipline, this is the person to be, because she has what it takes to run a class. Not only that, but she was going to transform these qualities to the national level. We've seen a lot about her when she was the Minister of Education. She did a wonderful job, laid the foundation for us to build on. Unfortunately, when the NPP took over, they just did not do what was supposed to have done, the foundation she laid. So on the whole, I think this is a bad choice for us. I'm very grateful to the leadership of the NDC, for instance, President Mahama, for re-nominating her to assist him in running, possibly, when NDC wins, which must be the case, to run the country and deliver, make it a better country for all Ghanaians, and to make Ghanaians and Africans very proud.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, Zita, it looks like my philosophy has come today, and then going back to one of our ancient, scholars, Aristotle. He was of the opinion that women have the intellect, but they lack authority, and that they cannot be leaders, right? And also, given the fact that Ghana is still a highly patriarchal society. And we know that no woman has ever been elected into this high office. How might Prof, right, her gender impact her ability to garner the support of Ghanaians to win she and His Excellency the executive position come January 7th?
Thank you so much, Ghana. It's good to be here. Again, as you rightly said, Ghana is extremely patriarchal, and as a woman in political office, you need to have some sort of tenacity and a voice. And so she's going to have a hard time. But again, we are in a different social movement where people want to see women in important positions. So I think it's a strategic movement for the NDC to have a woman run for vice president, and hopefully garner the support of women like me who are educated, and we judge people based on their credibility, their ability to deliver, not necessarily on their gender. Because I mean, look at the world is run by men. It's war everywhere, chaos everywhere. I believe that men do not have the ability to lead. I think the natural role of leadership is for women. I wholeheartedly believe that. In the animal kingdom, you don't see the baby animals follow the male; they follow the female. And so, human society has it, subverted with, of course, with patriarchy that has instilled the socialization that men are supposed to lead. But you look across the world, and everywhere man is in charge is chaos. Men do not have the ability to regulate their emotions. They say women were emotional, but men are highly emotional. They, look at femicide rate, intimate partner violence, wars, everything. So I think that, we are in a good movement where the female is being prioritized, and I hope that she can deliver. For me, I just want to see a presence. Maybe because I'm not in Ghana, I've not seen much of her, and I don't see the ability to garner that, support, and also make that. I feel she's a calm person, but she needs to have that assertive energy where a man will be skeptical in making some of those comments that Chairmanson made about her. So I want to see her metamorphose into more of a bolder voice, because I know she can deliver. And like rightly said, my colleague James said, our education makes our leadership transferable. The fact that somebody has a PhD in literature does not mean that they don't have critical thinking, they don't have leadership. It's the skills that we learn when we pursue academia, and those are vastly transferable skills. So I know Ghana is rough for female women politicians, but I hope that she can find her own voice and stand. But I'm going to land my ship with this particular question for us to think about. In as much as she's a bold choice, Mahama has 4 years. After that, is Ghana ready? Because the choice of a vice president is to prepare a successor. So is she the ideal successor? For me, that is something that I'm grappling with. It's good timing, but is she the successor that can be able to win victory for the NDC after the reign of Mahama? That is the key question I have.
Okay, that's a very important thought, and I think it's something that we may cycle back to in the course of our discussion. But in fact, you just gave me a layup, and I'm going to dunk with a question that would go straight to Hajia Sharifa Strong. You know, I'm sure she is strong enough to receive it. So, but, you know, the thing is, critics argue that Professor Nana, you know, and then Zita actually touched on it a little bit, that she lacks charisma and she doesn't have the ability to rally voters, right? And they normally emphasize the importance of a strong campaign presence in mobilizing voters, right? So, but is charisma overvalued in the calendar? Is it overstated? The importance of charisma in the election, especially in contemporary times, is that overstated? Does she really lack charisma, or, you know, alternatively, are there certain qualities that we could actually harness, or she could actually harness, to win a certain voter base without necessarily presenting those qualities that have historically been perceived as, you know, qualities of a good politician?
Thank you so much, Mr. Host. Thank you for having us. Indeed, this is the times for women. And I would beg for you to always begin with us, because the fire from Dr. Z was just amazing. Dr. Z and Dr. James touched on, you know, very important and key, things that Ghanaians have to shift from the old ways of politicking and actually look at what is going to help us. We've been doing and repeating the same things over and over and over again, and it hasn't helped us. Look at the state that our country or Africa is in now. Look, first of all, I want to commend those, as Professor James said, those behind, you know, the decision to retain her. The world is changing. The world has shifted from this sexism and, you know, from, you know, limiting women. We are now breaking down barriers, knocking down doors, the glass ceiling. Women are up there. America has the first female vice president. We saw Johnson Sirleaf. We saw Angela Merkel in Germany. Look, there are a lot of, you know, opportunities that when we are given the mandate to, you know, rule, the mandate to have a seat at the table, that we can bring a lot of changes. Now, going back to Professor Nana Jane, what has charisma got to do with delivery? What has charisma got to do with understanding your people's needs? What has charisma got to do with communicating effectively to your people? This is a woman who is coming from a diverse background. She is, I'm surprised people think she's not popular. She's very popular. Go to the Central Region. Because of this woman, the Central Region, I think the party had about 3 seats, and they rose from 3 seats to 13. She managed in winning 13 seats for the NDC. That actually brought them to a hung parliament, if you look into, you know, our history. And then, if as Professor James said, she has taken very big leadership positions that a woman dares to even dream about. And so we need different faces and different people from, you know, diverse, you know, background who can set a tone. Our country is in turmoil. People are angry. People are yearning for, you know, someone to bring us together. People want, you know, people that can speak to them, to their hearts, so they can resonate with what we are saying. We can't keep replacing raccoons with hyenas in our political arena. We need people who understand. Look, and for her maternal instincts is to her advantage. She's able to pioneer a lot of things, you know, and you know, educational programs that has really helped our future generations during her tenure. And you all would can verify that She was the brain behind a lot of initiatives that has actually placed Ghana's education at a very highest level, where we were very competitive. But now look at where we are now. She's the brain behind this free SHS MPP, have strongly used in campaigning, in deceiving Ghanaians. But of course, she planned to roll it out progressively, where she was building schools. She advocated for more schools to be built so that it can accommodate, children. She's the brains behind a lot of things. This is a woman who has served 2 times on the board of UNESCO. This is a woman who is a chancellor for Women's University in Zimbabwe. Okay, this is a woman who has sat on so many boards. So when it comes to giving women a seat at the table, it is about time. It's long overdue. Charisma is very necessary in our politics, but let's go back to our history and ask ourselves, how has that helped us? As our current president will say, are we going to eat roast? Are we going to eat schools? Are we going to eat charisma? What charisma are we looking for? That a woman can come to you and talk to you and tell you, I understand your needs. This is a woman who can connect with the larger group in Ghana, like our farmers, like our market women, like our school children, because of her academic record, like our even our politicians, because she can serve as an example to women who have not actually been given a space in politics today. So I think it's a fantastic decision, and I'm looking forward to, for Ghana to receive her, in a very nice way, to give women the opportunity to be able to be a part of these political discussions that we are having today.
Mr. Host, I think you are muted.
You are muted.
That's interesting. Anyway, I generally consider myself as someone who understands politics. And for instance, I found that, very adversarial posturing in the political space has become something that is, like touted as the characteristics of a good politician. And I always say there are a lot of people who admire politicians who conduct their work without the fanfare that some people have considered as characteristic of modern day politics. Mm-hmm. And I think that she presents very modest qualities that many people sitting at home watching on TV would say that this is the person that I would like to model my daughter after, and that if this type of person is presenting herself for office, I'm going to absolutely vote for her. And I think, as NDC political strategists have to look at it that way and look at the voters in cohorts, right? And then decide that these are the types of voters that we could potentially attract with her. And perhaps there are certain types of candidates that can attract other types of voters. But I see a significant voter base that would be very attracted to Prof as the running mate. And so I generally disagree with people who argue about charisma, be like having a very bombastic posturing and language in the political space. I honestly do not believe that sells. It doesn't go far. It might be loud, but I don't think it actually it's something that voters buy into. And I generally agree with most of you in terms of the way, you yes.
So, certainly. If I may come in briefly,
yes.
Follow up on what Hajia and then, of course, Dr. Zita had said. Tony Blair once said, somewhere in 1996, if you ask me of the first 3 priorities of a government, I would say the first is education, the second is education, and the third is education. And that is a very important statement that we all have to bear in mind. Education, education, education. Here's a woman who had, served almost her entire life out to this point in educating Ghanaians at the highest level. And not only that, became the chancellor of one of Ghana's premier universities, and ran that successfully. And not only that, as Minister of Education, we said that all. She laid the foundation for a better education, a better future. And that is where our future is. After all, it's not, you said it's not going to be, charisma is very important, but we have Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, for instance. Nobody would doubt his charismatic nature. But look at where we are as a country right now. We have to be honest with ourselves if we're going to secure our future. And of course, teamwork is very important. And it's not, the one thing that we probably have to bear in mind is that there's a difference between mobilizing and organizing, right? You can mobilize people when you have charisma. Mobilization is not organizing at all. And here is a vice president that's going to be taking office come January 7th, 2025, who is well prepared and has all it takes to build a better future, a better education system that she had laid foundation for to move us forward. That is the key for us. Thank you.
And if I may also come in, you realize that our country has lost a very big part of us. You know, her likes, I mean, coming into politics would actually wake us up to see that it's very important for you to, I mean, have respect, not just for political, positions or reasons, but for the people that you serve. This, her likes are coming into politics to restore our peace, to restore our faith in, people, to restore our dignity, because a lot has been done to our country that, the country that was once a black star to Africa and also the eye of Africa has now been reduced in the gutters. So we need a change. We need some different, people to come in and change, the way we do our politics and the kind of people we bring into power. We cannot rely on just people who can talk, people who can show off, people who can bamboozle their ways into things, people who can, be vindictive towards other people, people who can lie their ways, people who can deceive people. We need people who can wake us up to see what is good for us, what is good for our future, what is good for our economy, what is good for our children, what is good for our farmers, what is good for our country entirely. And if we are going to continue to listen to just words and no action, this is a woman with a fantastic track record that can back her words, that can back her action, that can back everything that she is as a candidate. So let's not just listen to the voices. Let's also pay attention to the actions that comes after the voice. I think it's very important for us to shift from that kind of politicking.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Zita,
just a quick one. And as much as I understand what my colleagues are saying, we need to understand the nature of Ghana's political terrain. I'm not sure how well my colleague, Dr. James and Hajia, are on social media, but it is unfortunate that the education system in Ghana, I always say, it doesn't produce critical thinkers and educated people. The education system in Ghana creates literates, people only who have the ability to read and write. You need charisma. You need presence. Like, you need that ability to be memorable, to be appealing. I could not believe it when people were saying no can, no vote. By no means will I even, no disrespect to Honorable Kennedy Agyapong, but how the hell does any group of people think he is qualified in any capacity to lead a presidency with his utterances? And again, gender plays a role. Men can get away. We can circle back to the very honorable and respected Professor Atta Mills. He had a calm demeanor, but he's a man. And so it plays in Ghana's political terrain as a woman. Gender plays a role. And I'm not saying, I like her demeanor, I like her integrity, but she just needs to assert a little voice. And it doesn't have to be a loud voice. They need to just find a way to put it in, because if you are on social media, you will, and I am on social media. I have quite a strong crowd on social media, on TikTok with almost 70,000 followers. And I can tell you from what I see that the average Ghanaian youth that are in Legon and all that, even though the schools are not really looking at integrity. And that is sad. But they're not looking at integrity, because these were the same people who are in the University of Ghana, University of Cape Coast, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science shouting no can no vote. And so we need to understand, yes. And I'm like, they must be kidding me. So we
Yes.
need to understand that in Ghana, integrity is important, but the average Ghanaian, if you test the pulse of Ghana, you go on the street of Ghana and you test the pulse of the average Ghanaian, they need something. They are a slogan kind of people. They need something to make you memorable to Ghana. So she is credible. We need to restore integrity back into Ghana's politics. But let us keep our eyes on the ball and realize that there is a segment, an overwhelming segment of Ghana's population that is charmed by charisma and just having a presence. And that is important for her to build on. We don't win elections by having intellectual discourse like we are having. We are all on a certain level.
Yeah.
You got to go to the grassroots level, and you need to be able to garner that sense of love. And I think Professor Tamils built that over time, having integrity in 7-8 years as a vice president to, more radical leader like Jerry John Rawlings. It kind of made it acceptable. So we need to understand how that plays, and gender is important in that understanding.
I completely agree with you, and that is where you and I come in, because we need to communicate these things and highlight them for people to actually see the need and the importance for people, having people like her. Remember, it's a pair, they are a duo, so they complement each other. In one breath, we have a fantastic John Mahama, who has done incredibly good job in Ghana and for Ghanaians, and we also have her coming in from a different angle. So I do understand, and I hear them. I'm on social media and I see it, but that's why you and I come in. We can't continue, as I said earlier, to move with something that has not worked for us. We need to shift a little bit and try new and different things, especially people, and to see which one we can actually hang on to. Because the world is moving. It's about time we also go out of our comfort zone and try new things that can work for us. So yeah, we hear them, we see them, but this is why we are saying it's time to give someone different a chance. Now, talking about Kennedy Agyapong, I mean, that's the beauty of democracy. I have the same sentiments as you, but then we are in a country that, supposedly is a democratic rule. And so every idiot can get up and say anything and it will be accepted. But again, that also takes away the moral fiber that, was passed on to us. And that is what kills me at the end of the day, that people like you are not going forward into the political, dispensation to fight for your country. Please, it's about time we step foot in that area to rescue what belongs to us. All the burden they are leaving, let's ask ourselves, where are we headed with that? Yes, the tone, as I said, needs to come down. We need people who can bring sanity back into our country. We need people who can restore our faith in each other. We need to shift away from the politics of identity so that those slogans will not have any effect on us, because we practice politics of identity. That is why people are saying no can, no vote, no vote, because they identify with him tribally. They identify with him politically because they are affiliated to him on the same political group. But then we are looking at, what is at stake, our country, our state, our sovereignty. We are looking at Ghana at large. We are looking at Africa, because we have all it takes. Like our current president came and deceived us with words, saying that we have everything now, but we are struggling for those who don't understand what tree that means in tree. We need people who can act after their words. We need people who can change our mindsets so that we don't continue to go in that way where if I'm a Northerner, I have to vote for a Northerner. Therefore, if a Northerner is a liar, a Northerner is not a doer, if a Northerner is not having the interest of the people of Ghana, if a Northerner doesn't care about the developmental issues in Ghana, the deplorable state of Ghanaians, and so I have to go. No, we need to shift away from that. We have to look at what is good for us. and work with that. We have to look for what is acceptable, because we are still governed by our cultural and religious practices. This is what we need to resuscitate. We have lost it. And that is why our politics is now reduced to money. How can you go and give someone 50 cedis to vote, to give away their rights? You, the one giving, and the recipient are all committing a crime. And I think it's about time we make these things a law, so that when we see people, corrupt people, inducing such wrong into our societies, we lock them, so that it doesn't become a norm that our children can, grow to practice. It's a shameful thing that we are witnessing, now. And for me, as a gender advocate, I would hope that women would take advantage of her being the nominee, for that highest position, as Professor James said, and act, to at least improve on themselves to be able to get to where she is. She is the emblem. She is the light that would come and then light up the spirits of Ghanaians. And I just wish that they would give her the opportunity to show us the way. Thank you.
Okay. I think we may have to put in a word for Zita to become an advisor to the vice presidential candidate. People say academicians are uptight. And I think, the appeal of Kennedy and the arguments I've heard all over the place is that, the days of eloquence and good English is over. And, and they normally would point at Nana Akufo-Addo with his, his black. When we were in Legon, we used to call it black. And, and then they say, oh, well, we tried a professor and now someone with very impeccable English, and his vice president is a doctor from a prestigious university in the UK. And so it's time for us to, quote unquote.
He actually went to Simon Fraser.
He did his PhD at Simon Fraser. And I think he did his master's at is it Oxford or something?
Oh,
and then proceeded to Simon Fraser. So, if we put all these together, people say, well, it's time for quote unquote the street boys to take over the show. And I think that may have been the appeal of Kennedy, right? But I think the damage was actually done by Nana Akufo-Addo, who, in my opinion, is an imposter, right? He poses as an intellectual, but I don't think he is. He's used the English, the good English, to cover, or it has covered up for him. So he has given, if you like, the so-called intellectuals a bad rap when it comes to, seeking leadership in Ghana. And it is time we call out his, the fact that he's not a real intellectual, because the guy, my understanding is that he didn't actually sit in a law school, in a law class, right? Again, he's a lawyer based on the manner in which, it was done back then, but he never really sat in a school or in a classroom to study law. So
Doctor,
yes.
With all due respect, he's a lawyer,
Yes.
and I have utmost respect for your titles up there, Dr. Z,
Yes.
Dr. James, and Dr. Agana.
Yes.
People now can be anything in this our modern world. I can get up today and say I'm a PhD. I can get up today and say the only thing is, even if I'm called a doctor, I can get in the theater to operate. That's what defines the borders. But then, as far as Ghana is concerned, people worship titles. People are so engulfed with this fame thing that, sometimes when you even address them, I remember one time we were having a conversation, you told me, Aja, can you please drop the doctor and just call me your normal, mark? And I said, no, you earned it, because I know the prestigious university that you went to that earned you that title. Professor James and Dr. Zita, all of you, I give you that honor and respect. But then go back to our country and see, we have left the most important things aside and we are holding on to nothing. That is what is worrying me as a people. We are holding on to nothing. Someone will sanction you for not calling them by a title that they feel they deserve to be addressed by. And so I think it's very important for a shift. like I keep saying, is very necessary. So whether or not he attained the highest of education, he could have done better because of his age. We are made to believe that age is wisdom. So for a person his age, he should learn to tone down, or it's about time for him to tone down. It's about time for him to think about his legacy. It's about time for him to think of the future of his country. I know that in many of the things that he has done, he did it out of vengeance because of what he believed was done to his father, what was believed to be his right, what is believed to, but at the end of the day, you have children that would be coming up to that, legacy, that name. What are you going to leave for them to hold on to as you are avenging the name of your own father? What do you think? How do you think your children will feel when the name Nana Akufo-Addo Dankwa comes up?
Yes.
That is what I think he needs to pause and think about.
Yes. I mean, absolutely. In fact, I am on a protest against the use of titles because some people are hiding behind them.
I disagree. I disagree. I did not do 4 years bachelor's, 2 years master's, 5 years PhD, 3 years postdoctoral fellowship. I'm a woman. 14 years for anybody to be calling me Zita. My thing is we need to have educational transparency. When people say they're this, you see, and that's my problem with the Ghana media. And that is why I don't tend to. Ghanaian media and Ghanaians do not verify. You Google me up, everything will come out, but they don't verify. Somebody says somebody got an honorary doctorate and posing. And I have no qualms with American system, but American system has this fast track from bachelor's to PhD kind of track. They have this master's PhD programs that combine
a crash program.
People tend to have the fast track. I did the traditional one. I know how I suffered, but my thing is that my honorable chairman, we need to have these credentials. The way we declare assets, people need to have the credentials declaration where you provide proof of your education, the institution, transcript if possible. And it is not that you cannot use the title doctor or anything, but to create. And I think that the Ghanaian news, the news agencies in Ghana are supposed to be, the ones who do that, but they don't dig anybody. Look at the way they were scammed by the so-called Dr. Ewan. And look at like Namon, a poor man can dress in the most fashion, but you just look at them and it's like this person is not credible. So how are they getting scammed by all these characters?
The era of imposters. Yes,
exactly. Right. So you are not wrong in saying Nana is an imposter. We want to see your credential, and again, it's there, Professor Tamils. You can see the clear indication that somebody has done the thorough work.
He has done the work. Yes.
So Ajay, I do understand you, and our titles are important. For me, I always say it's the only one when we're in the bedroom, but outside, my husband called.
Hey, my lady, you earned it and you got it. But also, just to add on before Professor James comes in, just to add on to that. But I think the world is now moving at a speed where skill is now the way forward. So I also want us to not get carried away with the titles and the highest academia, and also look into skill. I sit down here asking myself, why didn't I go into this earlier? That is a skill area. Why didn't I do this? And then I went back and studied fashion design. So I am a fashion entrepreneur and a fashion designer. I have so many titles, but this is the thing. Do people actually respect them? And, here in America or in the West, people like the plumbers, like the builders, like the carpenters, they are the ones that dictate, like the fashion, they are the ones that dictate the trends for us. They are the one that tells us what is going to be what next. So I think we also have to, slow down on this, so-called title and higher education. Dr. T is disagreeing. And look into transitioning the kids into skill, work where education will not only be the only thing. I have 2 kids, and I'll tell you, one is street and home smart, and the other is strictly book smart. Street and home and book smart, and the other one is strictly book smart. He's a bookworm. He sits on the toilet and read and holds up the toilet for hours. He goes to the restaurant and asks for newspapers and books, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you compare the two, the one that is adapted to the street ways is highly competitive. So when you look at that as a parent, I would want my child to be balanced. I would want my child to be introduced into another world where we can survive no matter what. Look at what happened in COVID. Nobody could go out to do any official work, but those who were able to do skill work were the ones that they valued as what? The most important or essential workers, because we needed them. We can't survive without them. So yes, that is why I said the two, Professor and John Mahama, are a pair that we need.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we need to, strike a balance where we will not just be one-sided.
Okay, absolutely. And I think Professor James has thoughts here. In fact, I have a question that is designed to tackle the question of education, right? Yes. And so for instance, given the fact that, and most of us, who have pursued graduate studies outside the country, and looking back into Ghana, we are beginning to see a certain decline in the standards and integrity of education in Ghana. We see the quality of faculty in our top universities, and we think that they don't measure up compared to the faculty that were there. Not all of them. I mean, not all, absolutely. I have friends who are in most of these universities, and I highly respect them and their accomplishments. But we can also see that it's been sprinkled with faculty that we believe are not up to the task in terms of their qualifications and all that. Student outcomes are becoming more poorer and poorer over the years, right? On top of that, academics in Ghana do not have the needed resources to do their jobs, right? There's no research money and all that. So, we may have been a little bit, engaging a little bit trivia in our conversations about issues of qualifications and all that. But on more seriously, looking at Prof's position, the fact that she actually was a professor for a long time, became the vice chancellor of the university, and also became, education minister. How do you think, if, for instance, she is eventually elected into the position, how can that really, be used as an avenue to shore up the quality and integrity of education in Ghana? I mean, maybe going into the election, how is she going to leverage that experience? And beyond her election, how is her position going to be used? And I believe that Ghana can become the education destination, or the education hub of Africa, because we are highly respected because of that. And if we begin to lower standards, we are going to miss an opportunity that we could have capitalized on.
Yes, thank you very much. I think this issue about education, we have to probably have a specific maybe show for that, to talk about education and the direction of it broadly. You recall that I said earlier, quoting Tony Blair, one time UK Prime Minister, emphasizing that if you ask me, or if you ask him the priorities of a government, he will tell you education, 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 the 3 priorities. That is, again, something that we have to take a look at in depth. And linking this to Jane Opoku-Agyeman, Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, who is an educationist by training and has done that for so long, I think it's a very important thing for us to bear that in mind, that education is the future. But what kind of education are we giving our people, right? When I was in a teacher training college, I studied what was called the history of education in Ghana. And so what was the purpose of that education? We've not been able to break away from that purpose of education that the colonial administration gave us. It wasn't meant for development. And then we have held on to that until this point. And we've seen how useless our education system has become. I must be honest with all of us, and then the fact that we hold on to titles are very important. I work very hard for my title, but when the title becomes the focus rather than what we can do, it becomes an issue. So it's very important for us to probably make one of the shows focusing on education. We can talk about it. What is the future for education? What do we do? And of course, skilled education is very important. How do you emphasize that? Practical things. Let me give you an example. One time I needed a doorbell, camera on front door. And so I needed an electrician to do that. I look around, couldn't find one. Eventually I found someone who happened to be an African immigrant from Liberia. And then he told me he'll be at my place by 8 p.m. to do that. And when he came, something that he was going to take less than 1 hour to fix, maybe 30 minutes, he was charging me over $350 for that. I said, wait a minute, this is very expensive. He told me, if you're not going to be able to, do that, I have to go because someone else is waiting for me. I said, okay, wait a minute. He had to do it. So I ended up paying that amount of money. But that's not all. He revealed to me that he was working somewhere. He thought he was very prestigious over there, but he quit his job and had gone into electricals. We was making a lot of money there, and told me the amount of money he had and the houses he had built. Actually, that week he was traveling to Ghana because someone had hired him to wire his whole building for him. You can imagine the future of that. You can imagine what he was making out of that, rather than what some of us holding on to purely academic that the Europeans gave us, and we've not been able to break away from that. I am in the education sector. I teach at Rutgers University, where I teach political science courses, but I can increasingly see that there's a gap between our education and what needs to be done at the local level. So the orientation, we need to reorient ourselves broadly about the future, and education should be at the center of it. And again, ask me the three priorities of my government. I'll tell you: education, education, and education. We have the best person to partner with, John Mahama, to transform our education sector into something that can be sustainable in the future. As of now, it's unsustainable. And that's why we see a lot of people just craving to have a title that, hey, even some of them did not even go into a classroom, but they end up having what they call doctorate degrees and whatever. And so that is polluting our system broadly. We have to be very honest with ourselves and as we plan for the future. A show on education will be a very important, Mr. Host, if we can.
I believe so.
Yeah, and it's an
Dr.
area
Zita,
that
what do you think?
it's an area that Zita is very passionate about.
Exactly, because I did my doctoral thesis on Ghana's education, and I analyzed the failure of Ghana and other African countries to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. And in as much as my honorable chairman, you said credentials are trivial, they're not, and that is why Ghana's education system is in the deplorable state. People do online PhD and you're hiring them, and people will always tell me, "Oh, Zita, come back to Ghana." I remember when I defended my doctoral thesis, my supervisor, I had two supervisors, one Nigerian, one Canadian, and he said, "You have such a great future. You're gonna be a star. Stay in Canada and make your mark in the world." And the other person said, "Yeah, but Zita can make an impact home. But when I go home and I create a seminar style of teaching where I allow students to come in at the graduate level, the way we do it here, come and read, elucidate, dissect the material, it will not be acceptable." So we need to understand that our part of our problem of Ghana's education is it's the people who are using the shortcut and not vetting people's credential. But going off what James said, skills are important, but we need a total education reform. Because you say skills. Again, the Liberian man is being compensated. The systems are in America to compensate you. I had my toilet clogged one time. I got the guy to come. $150. He didn't even spend 5 minutes. He charged me $150 to be able to do that. But the systems are there. So the key question is, are the systems in Ghana there? People go and do a Greek and they're in the banking hall trying to be tellers. You don't make agriculture appealing. So we need an entire education reform. It's one thing to say people should have the skill. And that's why I really appreciate John Dumelo for what he's doing, making a great sector look appealing. So we need to look at it holistically. Ghana's education system needs to be reformed drastically. The idea of saying first, second, third, and making a child number 50th is telling that child that you are not intelligent, but the education system is simply chew and pour, memorize, and ability to memorize. And so we need to have, if we want other jobs to be valued and recognized, then the education system needs to change, where people are put in teams instead of making them first, second, group people in teams and let the natural leaders come out, because that is what some of us were able to do when we're growing up in Ghana. You go and play, somebody push you, you're playing and pay. Natural leaders come up, hey, stand in line. This is how we're going to stand. It creates natural leaders. So we need to begin to revise the education system and the way we measure intelligence and evaluation, and begin to put children in groups. Give them group work as the end of term assessments. Give them group work. Let them work on a project. Until that, we will not. Our education must align with our needs. And in Ghana, we are in as much as some of you are saying that we are in a skill economy, we are not yet there. Ghana and Africa is still in the primary level. We have not passed industrialization yet. We are not in a knowledge economy as the Western world. We need to understand that we first need to be able to feed ourselves. So basic things like farming, agriculture, poultry, we need to be able to align our education with our needs, which is primary economy, being able to feed ourselves and being able to convert our natural resources to be able to sell and export. Until then, we cannot be here and be saying, oh, people are in America who are electricians, who are this making. It's because America has this system. Their trade school and all that is regulated, and we can hold them accountable. If a person comes and clogs the toilet and doesn't do well, there are systems there to hold them accountable. Ghana doesn't have a system. People do agriculture and they go and sit in the bank as a teller, and therefore that attractiveness is not there. So the education system needs to be revised, and we need to, put children in groups to be able to churn out ideas, give them, things to
competitive,
end of term
amongst themselves.
If you were hypothetically in the mining sector and you were an executive of a gold mining firm, how are you going to address this issue? Let the children think. And that's why I keep saying our education system creates literates, people who can read and sign birth certificate, but not people who can think and solve problems. So it all has got to do with reforming and revising and cutting away the relics of colonialism. Let us stop trying to compete with the West. Let us stop allowing United Nations and UNDP trying to tell us policies are. We are not in a service economy or a knowledge economy. Africa, we are in a primary economy, and until we can feed ourselves, we will always be a breeding ground for exploitation and imperialism.
Sharp.
I agree, and it's just because we haven't defined our interest yet. Africans don't know what we want, and then to make it worse, we have bad leaders who, for whatever their interest, would sell their country, would sell their people just to go and give it back to those who exploit on our weakness, which is very sad. I totally agree. I totally agree.
A friend of mine once said Ghana needs a total overhaul.
Yes,
true.
In fact, he couldn't be further away from. Couldn't have said anything more than the truth. So. Of course, I was just looking at our chats here, and somebody said that charisma is not overrated and it's necessary. However, a little more visibility for Prof. So the person seemed to be, agreeing 100% with Dr. Z over here, right? I would want us to conclude on this topic. And if, for instance, you were an advisor for the JM team or Prof. Nana's team, what would be your one advice? And I would like to go around each of you, that we all have our concerns, and sometimes we wish that people will hear us out. And so if this was an opportunity to reach out to them, what would you want to say?
I think it's very important for us to shift away from this self-seeking, way of support. Many people rallying behind political, figures as rallying behind them for their own personal reasons. I think we should actually go in to support, to be able to actualize or realize the dreams that they are presenting to us. So I would advise that the entire NDC team should open up, warm up to people to come in. For me, I feel like it's too closed, that people are disgruntled in this, as respect that they are surrounded by a few that just have access to. We have fantastic people outside who could make a lot of differences, or who could make good contributions in growing our country as a group of people, as a political party, if they are included. And NDC, as we were growing up, was known to be the party for all. It's an all-inclusive party, but now it looks like we are shifting from our tradition, where some people feel left out, where some people are so territorial, that they always feel threatened when they see people coming closer and closer, when they see people with potentials coming towards these leaders. I would advise that she makes herself available, and be the listener. And it goes back to Professor Atta Mills's time. Professor Atta Mills was a listener, was somebody who opened his office. I could walk into the office there without anybody asking me, because they knew the roles that we played at that time to make sure that somebody like him was where he was. So I think at this point, it is very important for us to note these things and realize that there are so many important people that we have cut off, that we need to bring back, to the house, and see how we can, move forward as a country or a people. Yeah. Ghana needs Professor Jane and then John Mahama to rescue it from the trenches that it is in now.
The rescue mission.
Yes. I agree completely with Hajia that Professor Mills was a listener, and so is Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. I was fortunate to be her student, and so I know what she was able to do, transforms people like me when we had this encounter with her. And I spent 1 year in front of her. So I know she's a good listener, and you don't have to be in a classroom to know that. If you pay attention, you will see that. And not only a good listener, but as a teacher, as somebody who had worked in that sector for so long, you can't be a good teacher if you don't listen. And so she's bringing that to the table. Back to the issue of charisma, yes, it's very important. Charisma is necessary, but it's not a sufficient condition to transform things. We've seen how, for instance, the current vice president, nobody would doubt that he's very charismatic, but we've seen what he's able to do. You can be very charismatic, but you can also be accused of being a liar. Because your charisma, if it's not deployed in a way that can serve the people, it is wrong-headed. And that is what we're talking about. So charisma is very important. We need that. It's not sufficient to deliver. And so if I am advising John and Jane's team, for instance, that would be an honor, of course. But to, like Hajia said, to open up to other people broadly and see what Ghanaians can do. There are a lot of Ghanaians outside, even those of us here in the US. You see all our people everywhere. The problem is that we don't have the structures in place. Dr. Zita was saying that we need to put structures in place that can really help transform the country. Here, yes, an electrician can make a lot of money because the structures are in place, they're working. But how do we create these structures, right? How do we move there? We are capable of doing that. And that's the vision of Kwame Nkrumah, for instance, not to just talk about the development, but the African personality, the personality of the Black man, to believe in himself, the Black man and the Black woman, that you are capable of doing what you can do to lift your country. And so the issue is basically to be there to listen, bring people on board, and think about the country first. Because at the end, if the country is well positioned, it doesn't matter who you are as a Ghanaian. Wherever you go, they will respect you. I've always been saying that, take for instance, the poorest American, right, the homeless American, for instance, takes, dresses up, puts on a cruise suit and travels to any part in Africa. And the fact that he calls himself an American, he's respected. Nobody knows he's even a homeless person here, right? But let's reverse the situation. The wealthiest Ghanaian comes here, Say, hey, I'm Ghanaian, I'm very rich. Nobody's going to mind you because you know what? You're carrying the image of your country, even however rich you are. But the poorest person carries the image of his country. He goes anywhere, he's respected. Let's build a country. And that will come through reorientation, reorganizing our education system, not only just book long, that's the problem, but book long and practicals. That will go a long way to help us. So these are some of the issues that Mahama and his nominee should pay attention to, and then get people on board. Get other people that can really help shape the future of the country. There are a lot of Ghanaians out there who are willing to do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Z.
Yes. Mine is going to be simple and short. Mahama and Professor Nana cannot solve Ghana's problem in 4 years. So my advice is going to be they need to be specific on the key goals they want to achieve, and they need to clearly outline those goals. And as an academic, I'll say they need to take goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. We call it SMART goals. And so they need to focus on which sector or which a combination of the few sectors they believe they can transform in Ghana for the next 4 years, and one that posterity will remember them for. That is the key advice I'm going to give. We need to veer away from the overly ambitious campaign promises. The ordinary Ghanaian is becoming discerning on some of these things, and the colossal failure of Nanado and the MPP government is an indication that these days you can't whistle and buy your way through that. So they need to clearly, I like the 24-hour economy, but it comes down to systems. So if that is what John Mahama wants to do with the support of a wonderful vice, then they need to focus on that and make sure that it is specific, it is measurable, it can be achieved, it is relevant, and most importantly, within the 4 years time bound, they can be able to achieve it, and one that posterity will remember Ghana for. To land my plane, my father was sick in 2022. He had a stroke, and one of John Mahama's initiatives of a hospital, which is the International Maritime Hospital in Tema, it was state of the art. You know, even in as much as my family and I were paying out of pocket in almost close to $20,000, which the average Ghanaian cannot afford, but we were guaranteed that he was in safe hands because he cannot be transported out of the country. And being able to have that kind of facility in Ghana, that, you know, put him in that put us at ease. And so posterity will always remember what you do. And that is why I didn't want to comment on the Kuma, it's a finance he is being bashed online. It is not, and we sympathize with his family, but what are the young people remembering him for? Everybody's talking about his property and assets, and the Jura and building, and there's dissent among the young people on social media. The Ghanaian is angry, and they feel like they will not even give him sympathy. So John Mahama and Professor Nana, posterity will always remember you, and Nanado has carved his way, and he's remembered as one of the worst presidents. So be specific, choose goals that are attainable. You cannot solve Ghana's problem in 4 years, and make sure we remember you for making a mark.
Absolutely. You know, I always say GM has only 4 years if elected into office. And so his topmost priority should be legacy, right? What are Ghanaians going to remember you for? And that should always be at the top of all the issues in any decision making that he takes. What are Ghanaians going to remember you for? That should be his priority. And if I have any advice, if I had the ear of the president, the ex-president, or the vice presidential candidate, I would say they should think about legacy. And again, I think all of us here, are overwhelmingly passionate about education. And so my excitement with Prof is because of the fact that she's an educationist. She has risen through all the ranks there is in education. And I think she should come and bring integrity back into the educational space in Ghana. So I think it's been a very interesting conversation. This is our first episode, and we hope to continue, giving our viewers thorough analysis of the issue. We, in fact, had planned to have a couple of conversations, but I think this issue is exhaustive enough. We've exhausted it. We've touched on very important aspects of it, and I think it was very necessary that we do so. And so I would thank all who tuned in to listen to us this night, and I invite you to join us again next week. In the course of the week, we will share the topics that we'll be discussing, because we like to, talk on the topical issues that are emerging in Ghana. And so we cannot give you the titles or the topics ahead of time. When it's getting closer to the end of the week, we would provide those topics. And in due course, we'll be inviting our audience to engage with us through phone-ins, and that you would have your say in this program. Thank you very much to my panelists. It has been an exciting conversation, and I hope we, when we get back here again next week, we would, have the same passion to engage with the issues. All right. Thank you very much.
Today